Deusen, she's pretty cool, is not only a fierce competitor who has won women's grand champion in fighting at over 30 national and international events, but she is also a very, very successful studio owner who just opened her third karate school with husband Colin Van Deusen. Mrs. Van Deusen handles many facets of the business, including mainly the marketing, promoting, a whole plethora of items. And when you just open your own third school, I should say, I think it's safe to say that you're doing a pretty darn good job. So here today to speak about how women martial artists improve both the dojo's culture, chances to bring in and keep new students, please welcome Mrs. Tara Van Deusen.
Thank you for coming out.
Yes, I have to go back to microphone 101. Thank you, Barbara, for doing this, and everybody else. I began my training back in the early 1980s, and I know it doesn't seem like a long time for some of you guys, but for me it seems like eons ago, and so much has changed. First off, it was up in Canada, so they were a generation behind regardless. But needless to say, I was one of a handful of girls out of 7 locations where I started. I was 4 at the time, and fortunately for me, one of the other handful of girls happened to be my doctor. My doctor at the time, I believe, was actually trying to get my mother involved. She was 20 years old, a young mother, and I just so happened to be her route to that path and started my own journey. The reason that was so important to me was because when I walked down into this basement of this rec center with a cold concrete floor, the hard McElware bars, boards, they were having us punch when I was 4 years of age, doing knuckle push-ups on concrete floor. There was no way I believe I would have continued my training had it not been for that female doctor who happened to be there at the time. And she also happened to be one of those doctors who you walk into her office and she had pictures of herself scuba diving, she had pictures of herself hiking in faraway lands, all of which are things I've made sure to add to my bucket list. And she was very kind, she was very smart, she was very strong too. I remember noticing that even as a young age. And that encouraged me to keep going through that first day of really what probably would have been the scariest day of my life. It probably was, but she was kind of my light at the end of the tunnel. And since that time, I continued training. I became really close with many of my instructors. I had to leave and find a new studio at the age of 10 because we moved. But I know that all that would not have happened had I not had that one presence there on that first day specifically. And since then, I've traveled around the world. I've traveled around to many different countries. I've been a part of many different martial arts troops. Yes, I was looking at you, Mrs. Lawrence. And I've noticed that there seems to be congruency, that some of the more successful studios do have a female in some position, whether it's head instructor, whether it's assistant instructor, whether it's program director, but they often seem to have that dual combo of a male-female. So I am talking on what I believe females bring to the culture in a studio that may not otherwise be there. First of those things for me was rapport. Strong, confident female role models are respected by both parents and kids of both genders. And age, yet at the same time, they're equally less intimidating. You walk into a studio and there's a 6'6", don't get me wrong if you're 6'6" and 180 pounds, but you walk into the studio and there's this really big, strong guy, and you're already scared to walk into an unknown environment, somewhere you've never been, doing something that all you've seen, maybe a Karate Kid or Ninja Turtles or whatever the case may be. It's generally a little less intimidating if you walk up and are greeted by a young lady or a woman, or you see a woman on the floor teaching and you're greeted by a young man. Not only are most kids, correct me if I'm wrong, but I see at our locations, most of the times it's their mothers who bring them in. So automatically, us females have an automatic win because as far as rapport is concerned, we all know that it's finding that similarity that you have, whether it's a like, a business, something that you, a hobby. Well, we're female too. So we already have that instant connection when it comes to creating that rapport. Kids feed off their parents' energies. Kids know when the parents are nervous, so that is an automatic win for us as far as I'm concerned. Another aspect is the environment. The environment seems to be less intimidating if there's a strong female presence in the studio. I think we can probably all concur that one of the many reasons people are hesitant to take up martial arts again is because they're intimidated by the environment. They're thinking there's going to be a room full of macho guys trying to beat up, and/or women. Come on, Ronda Rousey's kind of intimidated, trying to beat up and take advantage of each other. But so consequently, if one of those macho men come into the studio looking for a place that is more kind or what they're looking for, and they see a female instructor, they kind of automatically assume that that's not the place for them. So we're kind of weeding those types out. They're lost, because obviously we can teach them good stuff, but at the same time, it makes for a more welcome community for other women, for young kids, boys or girls, for men. I'm sorry, but there's a lot of men that are intimidated to start. Actually, we've had a whole handful recently in recent times that they've always wanted to, and they're coming in at 45 years old because their wife started, so now they're going to start. So I think creating that environment, I think us females have helped do that. Again, it was a pretty intimidating environment as I walked in when I was 4. Technical development. Again, please don't take this the wrong way if you're a man. But I think us women that have had to train with male sparring partners for the majority of our life, I think we're forced to be smarter at the end of the day. But as a result, we've had to learn to be much more technical in order to be faster, in order to be more agile, more accurate, more efficient, to be able to apply the same techniques on bigger or stronger men. I'm not going to argue that most of the time men are stronger than females. Fortunately, we know it's scholar over the warrior, right? So we can use our brains. But when a woman sticks out their training over the long term, they'll often have developed greater technique out of necessity. Because we don't get to just over-muscle our partners. While then we have that same technical development that we can pass on to our students. And again, I know some great male instructors, please don't take me wrong, but I feel us women have been forced to really learn to break down the techniques, not unlike Ashlyn was saying with yoga, because that's how we survived. Maybe not physically, but yes, physically. Another aspect I would say was the communicative environment. And again, I'm not saying you men don't know how to communicate. Okay, yes I am. Women tend to do a better job listening. I think we've got plenty of, I've even got documented on my paper over there if you want to go look at some of the studies. But the fact of the matter is many people find it easier to communicate with female instructors than male ones, often finding them more approachable, more encouraging, and easier to learn from. This is true for kids and adults alike, as it is found that females generally tend to listen better. There is scientific research supporting this, but the communication study that I liked, performed at Manchester University, actually found that women not only have a better command of their language, which I may be struggling with at the moment, but they use less words to communicate the same points effectively, and they are far more likely to make more genuine sounding compliments. Those of us in here that are instructors, we know how important that compliment thrown from time to time, even if the student has 4 left feet. It's important. It's what's going to get them through those challenging forms, those challenging techniques, the fact that they just keep getting blitzed in the head every time they're sparring. So, men, come on, learn how to give a good compliment. Just kidding. You'll work on it. You're not telling me my time's up, are you? Okay, good stuff. Continuing on my list of having benefits in your studio. So if you don't, or having women in your studios, if you don't have any women, get some women in your studios, gentlemen. Role models, as we've had discussed already a couple of times, with many women and girls flocking to the martial arts these days, self-defense, bullying, you name it. Role models for both to look up to can only be seen as a bonus. It was actually found in an educational study within the last decade in schools, primarily in high schools, that girls perform better with a female teacher while boys perform better with a male teacher. I still don't know how I feel about that myself, but I do know after teaching a lot of kids over the years, and adults for that matter, that there definitely seems to be a better gender for one or the other. It may be a young boy that responds better to a female coach. It may be a young girl who responds better to a male coach. I know my two daughters are both opposite. My older daughter thrives with male coaches, which is probably why all the men from Ireland seem to have really enjoyed her presence, but she just loves having a male coach. My younger daughter loves having strong female coaches. That's where she thrives. So I think when we as a studio have both to offer, it's almost like, okay, you've got a fighter that fights well with her hands, and you've got a fighter, sit back down. Just kidding. Just kidding. If you've got a fighter that fights well with her hands, you've got another fighter that fights well with her feet. Well, if you have them both working with your students, you're going to create a more well-rounded fighter. I think the same can be said when you have a male or female. It doesn't matter which one's in the lead role as far as I'm concerned. But I think just having the options, again, enhances the studio culture. Is it really time already?
Listen, Brad, you're fine. You're okay. It's
Okay.
time, but you've got a little bit.
Okay, sounds good.
Stop right now.
She starts out, I'm feeling her presence.
It's like a reaper.
Okay, continuing on, I'm going to skip the leadership qualities. You guys can read that as well. As far as buying power, raise your hand in here if you have a martial arts studio or if you work in a martial arts studio. Okay, so there are a few of you guys in here. Well, interestingly enough, I found a few researches that mention that mothers make 80% of the purchasing decision, of all purchasing decisions. 80%. So, my idea is marketing to mothers is not necessarily a bad thing. But yet, still, martial arts studios all over there's some that do a great job marketing to women. As somebody was talking, the life skills and the outreach programs. The fact of the matter is for so long, martial arts has been, it's the men trying to reach out to the other fathers, and they've got their strong black belts doing perfect kicks, or the fighters, and how strong their boys can be if they train in martial arts. Well, quite frankly, I don't think there's many women that really care about that. They want their kids to be confident. They want their kids to be good leaders. Yes, we know as martial artists that confidence does come from learning how to protect yourself. I think there's a strong correlation, especially for men, in the ability to defend yourself and in their confidence level. However, we can teach the parents that when they walk in the door. If you've got a woman and she sees an advertisement with a bunch of perfect-looking kicks with strong-looking boys, and she's got little Johnny over here that she's not that, or she wants confidence for him, so he's obviously probably not the best athlete, not the most coordinated, and she doesn't see him as the strongest, she's not going to relate that to her child, and she's probably not going to put her child in that type of environment. We actually worked this ourselves at our studio and started putting a bunch of beginner belts on our pictures, and started putting pictures out there of less than perfect kicks, and it was so hard ego-wise. It was so hard. But wow, did our phones start ringing instantaneously. And that was a huge learning lesson for myself. Yes, we still throw up the good pictures every so often to make sure people see that yes, we can still train. But at the end of the day, I want to be able to teach that kid with 4 left feet, that kid that's heads down by the floor because they're so lacking in self-esteem. I want to be able to teach those kids how to defend themselves just as much as I want to teach the quarterbacks and the star soccer players and the ones that will go out and win national championships. So I think from a female perspective, sending our marketing to mothers will only help the studio. And it'll help create a different culture in your studio as well. And last but not least, advertising. The advertising benefits of having females, which then creates more female students. I think we're at just below 55% of our students are females. The best form of advertisement these days, besides free advertisement, anybody? Word of mouth. Word of mouth, referrals. Why? Because those leads that come in are warm leads. They've heard from somebody else they know and they trust about this great karate studio that's helping them with their little Betty or little Joey or whatever the case may be. So they're already, and when they walk in the door, they're already pro you. I don't have to tell you guys. Is that how you get me out? I don't have to tell you who spreads word of mouth best, right? You think the women are out there talking, or you think the men are out there talking? The women are out there talking. So I know our Facebook media is going crazy with the women. So keep that in mind, whether you're marketing towards adults, whether you're marketing towards kids. I know there's different, people prefer kids, people prefer adults, but at the end of the day, include both male and female, and you're going to see the culture in your studio change drastically. I'm done.